Good evening, dear friends of the Tube. The Tube U. A hidey hi and a hoody ho to you all. For those fans of classic British comedy. Yes, here we are once again. It is now 7 weeks into the UK lockdown. Get down. In fact, we're now into week 8. It is now Tuesday. I usually try and do these on a Monday evening, but this is also, again, as with last week's review vlog, it's a bit of a dual vlog. This one, yeah, I can't speak. Dual vlog. It's a long pace, but at the end of the day, it's also about an hour later, or a couple of hours later than I'd usually do these, because it is the 12th of May, which means today marks 6 months. 6 months since Boris Johnson and his pro-Brexiteer Tory government cabinet were elected as the Prime Minister and government of the United Kingdom. 6 months exactly today. So this is a week 7 review and a sort of 6 month take review on, their first 6 months in the job. You can probably guess what my sort of criticisms and opinion might be, but we'll get there in a minute. As you'll probably see behind me, I don't think I've done this one. For what's a slightly different background, mostly because I couldn't be bothered, to be honest, trying to set it all up to try and get Jay in the background as usual. This is just a bit quicker, a bit easier to do. And again, it's late, so I couldn't be bothered with all that. So yeah, week 7 gone. I have to say, on a personal level, the weeks are going quite quickly for me. More quickly than I would have thought they would do. They are starting to blend a little bit. Each day is starting to blend into the next, but that's going to happen, isn't it, I'm very careful. I try and keep a specific routine, so the same routine every day. So I'll do me, housework in the morning, and then I try and sort of then have my lunch at the same time. I try and go for a walk in the morning at the same time. When I get up, depends how much sleep I need or I've lost or not, because I've not been well. I mean, this is, I think I've lost count now. This is the 5th week, I think, where whatever I've had is still tailing off, but very slowly and gradually. I'm still not 100% back to myself. I'm getting there slowly. My breathing's better. That's been one of the biggest things. Is I've had a lot of problems with my chest, but not serious stuff. Touch wood. And that seems to be getting very gradually better. But blending, still blending despite keeping the routine. As you can see, I have lots of hobbies and things. I do practice my guitars in one sort of afternoon, or I'll practice my piano another afternoon, my violin and my flute another afternoon. Try and vary it a bit, I was watching, probably like you and most people, I was, when I sort of had my free time, watching a lot of telly, too much telly to be honest. I've become very bored of TV. On my tablet a lot, too much again, getting very bored. I've realised I've been drawn in, without really realising it, into Twitter, and getting involved in Twitter like every, sort of 30 minutes or whatever, and posting, which I've enjoyed. But again, I'm thinking you're posting because you're bored, because you don't usually do this, and certainly not to this extent. So I'm trying now to consciously do something more productive in my afternoons, basically. Um, so I'm still continuing to try and do what I can for my PhD, which I'm coming towards at the end of the first year, so end of the first year of, and this is sort of obviously what's going on has put a bit of a halt on all of that, because right at the minute what I would be doing now, if this wasn't going on, I actually would have done already, is actually send off my research materials. I'll be doing my research now, but I can't do that because of lockdown, really. So I've got to wait for that to end, really, before I can carry on with that. My university itself is completely shut, so there's not really the people there, because you have to do things like, if you want to do research, you have to fill out an ethics application. So it shows that you've considered all the ethical points that might be relevant to what you want to do, the group you want to question and research, data protection, all that sort of stuff. And then so they have to rubber stamp that it's okay, it falls within those boundaries. But I can't do that because the board's not sitting, the committee's not sitting, because of all of this. So that's at the minute I'm a bit stuck as far as that's concerned. But I'm continuing to read and do the reading that I can do at the moment. But I mean, simple things like I can't go to the library physically to go and check out articles, books, and all the other resources. Because it's not just books that you look at. And the whole point of a research PhD, sorry, I can't speak there. Research PhD is that when you are thinking of doing one, you have to write a research proposal, and one of the main points of the research proposal is to show your university and the people that are sort of in charge of postgraduate research, it's called, are happy that you've shown that there's a gap in the academic knowledge in the area that you're studying, basically. Because of course, what's the point in you spending 3 years researching something somebody else has already researched? So you have to do what's called a literature review, where you basically spend weeks, months developing your research idea, but also you need to check on all of the available sort of research databases, articles, all this sort of stuff that what you're trying to research hasn't already been covered extensively enough by other researchers. So there's a gap there that needs to be filled in knowledge basically, academic knowledge. So obviously I proved that to their satisfaction, because that's what I'm doing. So, but the problem, that's a double-edged sword, because okay, you've proved there's a gap in the knowledge that needs to be filled with research, and your ultimate PhD report, and all of that, and the stats, and the quantitative and qualitative research and everything. But there's the problem as well. The problem is I don't have anybody else's research to sort of latch onto and say, okay, I'll do that. You have to devise your own research strategy, a project plan. You have to satisfy the people running the PhD sort of course that you're on for this 3-year period. Each year that you're, and throughout the year, each year that you're doing what you need to be doing, that you're in the right sort of ball place in the sort of plan, basically. Basically, they're just happy that you know what you're supposed to be doing. You can get some. I've got friends, a few friends that have done PhDs. You can get some very obscure research PhDs. Mine's not particularly obscure. Mine's an interesting one because, from what I can tell from my research and literature review, what I'm researching hasn't really been researched for at least 40 years, if ever. Not what I think what I'm researching, as to my knowledge, has never specifically been researched. And one of the reasons for that would be because usually when you get academics, a group of academics or an academic to research something, it costs money. They're being paid to research something for a certain organisation, or government, or government department. So of course, some things just won't have had that because government departments, organisations didn't see the value in researching a certain subject. That's a subject I'm doing. It wouldn't really have. Well, actually, it should have been, in my opinion. As I think, if it had been, perhaps, and the steps had been taken to rectify, address some of the problems that are probably going to be brought up in my eventual PhD thesis, things would have been better for a lot of people politically, economically. It's a sociology PhD, politics and social policy. So anyway, that's enough of me. We're already at 12-13 minutes now. So yes, week 7. Last time I did a big list. I had a big crib sheet because there was so much happened, and I didn't want to forget it all. But actually, I'm not doing that this week because there was so much, and I felt like I was a newsreader rather than giving my doing the vlog. The big news, I suppose, the biggest topics, the most contentious topics in the UK over the last week has been again starting to be Groundhog Day here, and it's Groundhog Day in the news, has again been the government totally failing to meet its own target set for the number of tests to be carried out each and every day. The week before last week, I think it was in the video, last one, the government's stated published target on the Number 10 website, I believe, and Twitter account was, I think it's a week before that as well, was 100,000 tests per day in England. I think this is in England actually, I'm not sure this is on sort of frontline staff and frontline workers, things like that. So it turns out that it's going to be more than 7 now, isn't it? 8 days in a row, all last week, they have singularly, spectacularly failed to do that, to meet their own target. The PPE. Oh, the other one was PPE. The much vaulted and cooed over and publicised PPE ordered from Turkey, and I think it was a Hercules plane, RAF Hercules, that arrived with it eventually on the UK sort of airfield, and there was all a big huge daily news event about the whole thing and all of that. 82 tons of PPE, all this sort of stuff. Turns out this week just gone that much of it, if not all of it, was apparently of no use, was not usable. So, as you can see, things are going from bad to worse on a daily basis. Then over the weekend, because there's been a lot of pressure on during the last week as well from the business sort of sector and everything, with the economy, being hit the way it has been, same as in the US and everywhere else. Because I noticed with Trump, he's been same sort of stuff. He's been desperate because he's being lobbied by his business pals to end the lot, get workers back to work, basically. Same thing's going on here. Boris Johnson did a pre-recorded address to the nation, which was shown on Sunday evening, Sunday night. Strange time to do it. Most of it was total gobbledygook, meaningless verbiage, I think George Galloway called it, which is pretty typical of him. What made me laugh was if you had that a transcript for that and not Boris Johnson's name on it, and you showed it to people, I'm sure a lot of people would say, "Oh, that's Trump. That's Trump talk. That's a speech by Trump." It was very Trumpian. It was the phrases were very Trumpian and didn't mean anything, basically. But the whole point was to try and soften us up for the fact that they were going to try and get people back to work, at least some people back to work, tomorrow, Wednesday. But the whole thing was so badly done, and just so badly presented, that all it ended up doing was totally and utterly confusing people, giving out a terribly mixed message. So at the same time, Number 10's press office had come up with, for the previous weeks and months, the slogan had been "Stay at home, protect the NHS." On Saturday or Sunday, when this obvious change of the rules regarding lockdown was about to be launched on us this week, they'd changed the slogan from "Stay alert, control the virus." No one knows what that means. It's meaningless. Stay alert. But what does that mean? It's not sneaking up on you from behind with a snooker ball in a sock. Stay alert. I mean, in as much as you can stay alert for a virus, weren't we all doing that anyway? We'd all doing what we could do. Isolating, staying indoors, washing your hands, if you're out and about, if you're shopping, having something over your face to try and sort of, keeping your distance from people. It's just baffled. So everyone was completely baffled by that one. But then control the virus. Big bloody letters, control the virus. A central part of the sort of, it's like a placard thing. It's like a neon orange, neon yellow placard with sort of what do they call it? Sort of arrow stripes in green around it. Very sort of control the virus was the central thing. Stay alert, control the virus, big thing. Save lives. Control the virus. Again, utterly meaningless. If we could control the virus, then none of us would be staying indoors for the past, what is it now, 2 months or more. None of us would be having to stay off work and stay indoors and not see our loved ones and not go out as much as we need to and want to, or get back to daily life for the next Christ knows how many weeks and months still. Control the virus means nothing. He was, the proverbial hit the fan, even for the MSM. the usual Tory supporting, Tory apologists, even they just could not think of a way of spinning that, any of that, so it made any sense whatsoever to anybody. So the Monday morning, yesterday morning, on the breakfast news here as well, it was just, especially ITV, with Piers Morgan and Susanna Reid, who usually gives the government the benefit of the doubt. Yesterday wasn't happening, and Piers Morgan was great. Apparently, the BBC softballed it as usual. Yesterday and today, the government have decided to boycott the ITV morning Good Morning Britain show that Piers Morgan does, because he gives them all the ministers that come on, the junior ministers, such a hard time, and rightly so, because at the end of the day, I'm sorry, we're not talking about the government have messed this up from beginning to now. Messed it up is putting it mildly, and the result has been, a little bit of inconvenience for somebody. But we're talking about 50,000 plus dead. 50,000 plus dead from the beginning of this 3 months ago. 3 months ago, UK citizens. The job of a government, the first job of any government, is to do whatever it can, whatever resources are at its fingertips, given to it by the public, by us, to protect the public. Surely that's the first, most basic job of any government, any organisation, any employer. Vicarious liability, all this sort of stuff, health and safety, corporate manslaughter. The first thing they have to do is ensure your safety, my safety, our safety. Of course, the Tories, if anyone's been paying attention, and of course the mainstream media have not been paying attention, even though they know this, because it's been going on for so long, they know it, but they just don't want to report it. The Tories have been killing people off in this country in much greater numbers than have died so far from COVID. Totally unnoticed by most of the media, totally unreported. Danny Dorling, who is a researcher down in Oxford, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, published research which showed that it could link directly at least 120, 130,000 early deaths to the austerity cuts introduced by the coalition government, the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats, back in 2010 on. That was 3 years ago. So it's I mean, and that was a Conservative figure then. So you're probably talking about 200,000-300,000 people either prematurely dead, or have had their lives destroyed so badly, their health, mental health, physical health, directly as a result of government policy, Tory policy under Cameron, under May, now under Johnson. Before any of this happened, utterly ignored, because of course it was happening, it was being done to a section of society that has no voice, is completely unrepresented in the media, is unrepresented economically, unrepresented in society. The poorest, the disabled, the homeless, people who don't, not only don't have a voice, but are of course traditionally and still used as a scapegoat for, along with migrants and all this sort of stuff, foreigners and all that, as a scapegoat for what's been going wrong in this country for 10 years. I mean, literally been entertainment, literally, for the middle classes and the the upper middle classes. Literally television entertainment with things like Benefit Street and all the other plethora of similar sorts of things for people to sort of glare at, laugh at. It's brutal. I mean, we like to sort of tell ourselves and with pride that how civilized we are in the 21st century, and the 21st century West, the first world, how civilized we are in the UK and the US and Europe, parts of Europe, France, Germany, all this sort of stuff. So civilized, aren't we, compared to the third world countries, or the communists in China and Vietnam, or the or the Russian capitalists. That makes literally no sense at all. Literally no sense. I mean, I'll have to do a video about the whole Russophobia stuff is so odd, because you're not even talking about, Russia stopped being a communist state in 1991. It's been a capitalist state ever since. That's what Reagan and Thatcher wanted, wasn't it? I thought, for Russia to be like us, and it is. Please don't anyone try to tell me Vladimir Putin is a communist. He's not. He's a capitalist. He's in the same club as Trump and Johnson. They're all in the same capitalist club. The only difference is that, unlike Yeltsin, Putin hasn't just let the US, the EU, the UK pick Russia's pockets, while it, as George Galloway says, lies drunken on the floor. Passed out on the floor. That's the difference. That's what's actually going on. I'm sure you've worked that out yourselves if you have been watching what's going on for all this time. Now, of course, it's the whole from Trump. It's the Chinese disease. China. Look, don't look here. Look over there. I said in last week's vlog that the real death figure in the stats in the UK were, I think, 40,000+. Now everyone reckons it's 50,000+, around about maybe 50,000, something like that. So far, that isn't the official figure, but of course, again, it wouldn't be, would it? Why would they publish the real figures? The government are still refusing, which again no one understands. I've got a hunch why, to publish or give access to the public or the opposition, nobody else, the science that all of their decisions have been based upon, apparently. My own personal hunch on that is because the science is either so flawed and so bad they don't want other scientists to see it, the public, or because, of course, many of these advisors are from some of the world's most powerful, largest pharma companies, directly from them. Sir Patrick Vallance, who's the UK government's chief scientific advisor, straight from the R&D department at GlaxoSmithKline, I believe. So those are the sorts of people. But in the UK, it's been quite obvious to all of us from the beginning that Boris Johnson is Prime Minister only in name. The real Prime Minister, the real decision maker, is Dominic Cummings. Dominic Cummings famously, it was reported, said right at the beginning of this, or before it really kicked off, when the government were made aware of this, something like, if it means old people dying, so be it, sort of thing. And then they started with the whole herd immunity policy, basically, response. After criticism, they dropped that officially, but my hunch is, did they really drop it? I don't think they did. I think this is. I don't think any of this missing targets, missing PPE, ventilators, and having a word about them, and all of that. I firmly believe it's because they still have an unofficial herd immunity policy, and that would also make sense as to why they don't want to publish or people to see the scientific data, because I think the scientific data is geared towards that, basically. That's my own personal. Sorry, not there. I know others share the same view that I've spoken to, and of course that's a problem now, because as they're now trying to ease lockdown, as they're trying to fiddle with these sort of confusing message now here in the UK, what they're about to do, I read tonight, is use economic measures to force a lot of people back to work effectively. There's been a furlough scheme for companies that want to take it up, which is basically, if you apply to the government's furlough scheme, the government will pay 80% of some of your workers' wages during all of this. The government, well, they didn't announce, but tonight, I think tonight they've announced that they're going to extend the furlough scheme, but actually, at some point, I think after July, they're only going to cover 60% of the wages of workers from the government's the companies that have applied for furlough. Well, of course, that's effectively an economic cap forcing people back into work, starving them back into work, because they won't be able to afford stuff they would have afforded on 80%, which was already 20% less than they would have got if they were working. So it's done on purpose, But of course, it'll be spun as we're helping them back to work, Benefit sanctions are going to be, which have been suspended for 3 months, while 2 more million at least have had to apply for universal credit, which is the out of work benefit here, and in work for low paid work. So they've suspended what's called the sanctions regime on that, which means basically if you don't follow exactly what you're told to do, if you don't complete a task, you miss a task by a certain date or time, they stop your money. They stop the £70. Now it's £90. The £90 a week that you live on, they give you to live on that while you're looking for work or whatever. So they suspended that, but they've already said they're going to bring it back in at the end of June, after June, which is next month. So you've got people now facing a 60% cap on their wages if they're even part of the furlough scheme. Those that aren't, that have had to apply for universal credit, all of a sudden are going to find that they're now thrown into the benefit sanctions, the punishment part of that, which they haven't been so far. I'm struggling to see where this is going to go. That's going to be resolved, to be honest. The government, again, I think they are out of their depth, but I think also that they are following their own policy unofficially, herd immunity. The problem is herd immunity doesn't work. It's not first of all, vast amounts of people are going to die, which is what's happening. Excuse me. I'll look out to the real figure now here. For COVID deaths and related deaths, puts us second in the world with the worst death stats, second only to the US, but actually not that far behind the US. And bear in mind, you can't just take the bare death stats. You have to relate it to the size of population and resources economically and everything else that each of those nations has. 50,000 dead so far in Britain, which means there are more dead people due to COVID in Britain per million of population. Total population being about 68 million here. 68, yeah, something like that. So more dead per million population in the UK than in the US. The US has got, well, I don't know, is it about 50 million people? Sorry, 500 million? Something like that, about 10 times more than the UK. So it's you're not comparing apples with apples, you know. Obviously, the US is the richest country on the face of the earth, possibly the richest country that's ever existed. We're not, you know. We're supposedly we're sort of sixth, something like that. But what we are, I don't know. But in reality, I don't know. But so actually, if you look at it that way, relatively, as you should do, really, our stats are worse than the US is. Our performance is worse. The government's performance of protecting people is worse. And of course, going forward, there's no, because they keep missing the targets, failing to meet the targets, protesting, and there's no stuff. And now we've got this. Last week it was this contact tracing app, which seems to have been trialled like that, and is now just out, and everyone can just download it. And of course, there are huge concerns about who gets the data, what's done with the data. It seems to be a bit of a snooper's charter at the minute here. I don't know what it's like in the US, because all of the usual sort of checks and balances where this sort of stuff and the data gathered and that would have to be approved by a judge via a warrant. The government rushed through legislation as this all started, which no one seemed to notice. Again, the mainstream media didn't really seem to say anything about, where they don't have to go to a court, go to a judge to get a warrant approved. They can just surveil. And there's huge concerns that this app's one of the central methods of doing that, basically. Because one of the things that's happened, notably, again, if you've been paying attention here, is that around testing, almost all of it, the technology, the apps, the booking systems, the actual tests themselves, all seem to have been farmed off to the big tech names, Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and others. They're the ones that are now actually effectively in charge of what response there is to COVID, the COVID crisis here, probably just the same in the US. Which means effectively the governments here, the Welsh government, the UK government, I don't know about Scotland, I'm not sure, and Northern Ireland, have abrogated their duty, that's the right word, and just handed it over to, they were elected to carry out, and handed it over to for-profit giant tech companies. Again, this doesn't seem to have been gone over, delved into by the mainstream media here. And the mainstream media here is supposedly not bought as the US mainstream media is owned by a very few of these giant companies, supposedly in the UK that's not the case, but effectively the results are the same, I'm afraid. So that was the week that was. Already about to hit 40 minutes, so I better shut up now. But yeah, let's see what happens now. I'm getting less and less clear what's going to happen, apart from mass possible civil unrest and just mass anger gradually increasing and increasing. It'll be very interesting to see tomorrow, Wednesday, when these restrictions on workers going to work have been lifted to an extent, and some schools opening up again for this school children. How many people do actually listen to the government and go back to work? That have the option, of course. That's or how many parents will send their kids to school? Because I have to say, if I was working at the minute and had children, I'd be doing neither. As far as the UK government's concerned, as far as England is concerned, I live in Wales, so it's different. It's funny because it's highlighted in Wales and Scotland. The first ministers in both countries, who are sort of like the prime ministers for those regions, because they're devolved governments in Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland, have basically said, well, Johnson's been saying all this sort of, we're going to lift restrictions for workers and for work and schools and things like that, and exercise and things. So there's, you can go out and all, more than you could before. At exactly the same time, with this confused messaging, the messages from Scotland and Wales have been, well, ignore all that here, just continue as we've been doing, stay in and socially distance, because we don't know, and we still don't know where the outbreaks have been, who's been in contact with who. Until we know that, no more, life can't get back to normal. Where are the unions in this? Where's Unite? Where's Unison? Where's the TUC? Where's Usdaw, the shop workers union? Where are they? I've been looking. I'm on social media all the time, as I said at the beginning. Watch the news all the time. I haven't heard a peep. I haven't heard a single word from the unions here about protecting their workers from employers forcing them back to work, or the government forcing them back to work with a 60%, 60% paid cap furlough scheme thing. I've heard nothing from them. They've just seem to have disappeared at exactly the time when they were needed. Same as the Labour Party, really. The Labour Party, Keir Starmer, the new leader, nothing. Yesterday I saw him, he's the most animated I've ever seen him, but it was nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was so weak and pathetic. People are going to start getting angry. I mean, they're already angry, but I mean really angry. And I think the government's hand is going to be forced on a few things in the next weeks and months. It's already being started. The media, who seem to have turned on them and Johnson, they seem to already be starting to force the government's hand and forced a few U-turns on some policy decisions that were obviously going to be announced and have had to be announced, so they've been so sensitive about it, announced slightly differently, even though the results have been slightly. I mean, the furlough scheme thing was everyone knew that it was going to be cut to 60%, but then tonight they sort of spun the story from Number 10 and the Tories and that in the Tory papers to say, and it's basically most of them reporting that the furlough scheme is going to be extended to September. Isn't that wonderful? Wonderful sort of Rishi Sunak, the bloody ex-Goldman Sachs man that's now the Chancellor. Isn't that, the generous government wonderful? Then you read a bit further down and it says, but after July, it will be cut from 80% to 60% of wages. So there's a lot of spin going on, as you'd imagine, as you'd guess. So anyway, that's enough now. So I'm going to say ciao for now. Good night. Have a nice night. Have a nice week, if possible. Try and stay sane. Try and stay healthy. Try and stay safe. Out of boredom, I might do a few more funny videos just to amuse myself full of time, enjoy myself. Because not many people watch these, but I enjoy making them. It's fun, and I enjoy doing the editing and everything like that. Obviously, the last one was a a bit of a attempt at a parody sort of ASMR sort of COVID calming thing. I always want to have a go. As a bit of a laugh, really. I know one of the commenters, hello, who you're watching, said I gave her a laugh. So, and then also I put them to sleep. I don't know if I mean that put them to sleep, or if I just generally put people to sleep. I can believe that. Again, 45 minutes now. So, excuse me. So yeah, I will see you next time, and you take care. Nos Rider. I think that's good night, Welsh. Good night.